The stench of burnt circuitry filled the cramped holding cell as Kieran Walsh examined the frayed wires protruding from his mechanical arm. 3 weeks in Thraxian captivity had left little opportunity for maintenance. He flexed his fingers, wincing at the delayed response time. "Stand, human," a harsh voice commanded as the energy barrier dissipated. 2 Thraxian guards entered, their violet skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Unlike the exaggerated depictions in human propaganda, they had the same number of limbs as humans. 2 arms, 2 legs, though their fingers were longer, more dexterous, and their eyes larger with vertical pupils that narrowed at the sight of him. "The Queen demands your skills," the taller guard said, voice distorted through the translator embedded in Kieran's ear. "Lucky me," Kieran muttered. Being singled out by Queen Matrix rarely ended well for prisoners. They marched him through winding corridors of polished obsidian, past chambers where other human captives toiled at tasks deemed too dangerous or demeaning for Thraxians. The final doorway opened to a cathedral-like space teeming with exotic plants and floating orbs of light. At its center sat Queen Matrix upon her crystalline throne. Unlike her soldiers, her skin shimmered with iridescent patterns, and a crown of living metal encircled her head. Despite himself, Kieran couldn't help but notice her striking beauty, regal and dangerous, like a venomous flower. "The mechanic," she announced, eyeing him with clinical interest. "You've maintained the neural interfaces on your human battleships." Kieran hesitated. "I was a repair technician, yes." Her lips curled into what might have been a smile. "Perfect. The Void Fang's harness malfunctions. You will repair it." A low growl drew Kieran's attention to the shadows behind the throne. A massive creature emerged, wolf-like in form, but with shoulders that reached his chest. Its midnight fur absorbed light, and cybernetic augmentations lined its spine and skull. Its eyes, unnaturally bright, fixed on Kieran with predatory focus. "Skoros serves as my enforcer," the Queen explained. "Lately, he's become disobedient." "You want me to fix your pet?" Kieran asked, instantly regretting his tone. Queen Matrix descended from her throne with fluid grace. Up close, he noticed the subtle differences, her face more angular than a human's, her movements almost hypnotic. "Fix the harness, human, or join tomorrow's execution ceremony as a participant rather than observer." She circled him slowly. "The Voidfang species is telepathically receptive. The harness amplifies my control." She gestured, and a guard handed Kieran a toolkit, surprisingly advanced and clearly of human origin. "Spoils of war." "Begin now," she commanded. "Skoros won't attack unless I order it." As Kieran cautiously approached the beast, he noticed something unexpected in its eyes. Not just savagery, but intelligence and pain. "A big guy," he whispered, reaching out slowly. The creature growled, then winced as its harness emitted a faint electric pulse. That's when Kieran understood. The creature wasn't malfunctioning. It was suffering. "I'll help you," he promised quietly, knowing that in the Queen's deadly game, he'd just become a pawn with a very short life expectancy. Kieran crouched beside Skoros' massive form in the palace's mechanical bay, carefully examining the neural harness embedded along the creature's spine. 3 days had passed since his first encounter with the beast, and he'd made a disturbing discovery. The harness wasn't merely malfunctioning. It had been deliberately modified to inflict pain when Skoros resisted commands. "This isn't right," Kieran murmured, gently disconnecting a cluster of wires that pulsed with cruel purpose. The Voidfang's muscles tensed, then relaxed as the constant electrical stimulation ceased. Who would engineer something this sophisticated just to cause suffering? Skoros turned his massive head, intelligent eyes studying Kieran with what seemed like curiosity. Without the harness's interference, the creature's demeanor had shifted dramatically, still powerful and dangerous, but no longer consumed by rage. "You understand me, don't you?" Kieran reached out slowly, palm open. The Voidfang sniffed his hand, then, to Kieran's astonishment, pressed his muzzle against it. The fur was softer than he'd expected, almost velvety despite its midnight coloration that seemed to absorb light. "The Queen won't like that." Kieran spun at the voice, finding a Thraxian female standing in the doorway. Unlike the soldiers, she wore flowing robes of deep crimson, and her violet skin featured intricate patterns that spiraled up her neck and framed her face. Unlike Queen Matrix's cold beauty, her features held a warmth that seemed rare among her kind. "I'm just fixing the harness," Kieran said defensively. "You're doing more than that." She approached, moving with the characteristic fluid grace of her species. "I'm Everin, royal attendant to Queen Matrix. I've been assigned to monitor your progress." Kieran tensed. "And report my failures." "Perhaps." Everin knelt beside him, studying his work with knowledgeable eyes. "Though I notice you've disabled the pain inducers." "They were damaged," Kieran lied. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "An interesting assessment." She reached out, running her slender fingers along Skoros's flank. The creature allowed it, watching her carefully. The Voidfang were not always weapons. Before Matrix ascended, they were revered as guardians of ancient temples. Their telepathic abilities connected them to our ancestors. Kieran continued working, absorbing this information. So the Queen repurposed them. She believes strength demands subjugation. Evren's voice dropped. Many on Thraxis disagree, though few dare speak it. Their conversation was interrupted by the bay doors sliding open. Queen Matrix entered, her presence immediately commanding the space. Skoros tensed, a low growl building in his chest. "Progress," she demanded. Kieran rose, wiping grease from his hands. "The primary neural pathways were degraded. I've repaired the connections, but it will take time to calibrate." The Queen approached Skoros, who lowered his head submissively yet maintained a subtle distance that hadn't existed before. She noticed, eyes narrowing. "The beast seems calmer." Her gaze shifted to Kieran. "Explain." "Pain was interfering with the neural interface," he answered, careful to maintain eye contact despite his racing heart. "By reducing the inflammatory response, the connection becomes clearer." Queen Matrix studied him, her expression unreadable. "Tomorrow, Skoros demonstrates his abilities in the arena. You will attend, mechanic, to observe your work's effectiveness." Her eyes flicked to Everin. "Ensure he's properly prepared." After she departed, Kieran exhaled shakily. What did she mean by demonstrate? Everin's expression darkened. "Combat. Prisoners against the beasts." She hesitated. "Sometimes against each other." That night, in the small chamber they'd assigned him near Skoros's holding pen, Kieran couldn't sleep. He heard the Voidfang pacing, claws clicking against the metallic floor. Making a decision that could cost his life, he disabled the security lock and entered the beast's chamber. Skoros watched him, ears forward, intelligent eyes reflecting the dim light. "Hey, big guy," Kieran whispered, approaching slowly. "I think we're both prisoners here." To his amazement, the creature lay down, creating space beside him. Kieran settled against the warm flank, feeling the steady rhythm of the Voidfang's breathing. "We'll figure something out," he promised, not knowing if Skoros truly understood his words, but feeling the connection between them strengthening with each passing moment, a bond that would soon be tested in blood. The Thraxian arena loomed like a massive obsidian crown, its jagged spires reaching toward the violet sky. Spectators filled every tier, their excited murmurs creating an ominous hum that echoed through the structure. At the center, Queen Matrix sat upon an elevated platform, her iridescent skin gleaming under the dual suns of her world. Kieran stood in the preparation chamber below the arena, heart hammering against his ribs. Everin adjusted the ceremonial tunic they'd forced him to wear, a thin garment that would provide no protection against what awaited. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered, her fingers lingering on his shoulder. "She's accelerated the schedule." "Why?" Kieran asked, though he already suspected the answer. "She knows." Everin's eyes darted nervously toward the guards. The Queen senses your bond with Skoros. It threatens her. A metallic groan signaled the opening of the massive door across the chamber. 2 guards prodded Skoros into the room, the Voidfang's harness now adorned with ceremonial plating that glinted menacingly in the dim light. The creature's eyes immediately found Kieran, intelligent and alert. "Listen carefully," Everin said, her voice barely audible. "The neural harness has a failsafe, a resonance point at the base of the skull. If you can reach it." She was pulled away by a guard before she could finish. Queen Matrix's voice boomed through the chamber, amplified by the arena's acoustics. "Today we witness the power of absolute loyalty," she proclaimed. "The human believed he could turn my creation against me. He will learn the price of such arrogance." The floor beneath Kieran began to rise, lifting him into the arena. Across the circular battlefield, another platform elevated Skoros. The Voidfang stood motionless, watching him with those intelligent eyes that now reflected something like sorrow. Queen Matrix raised her hand, silence falling over the arena. "Skoros," she commanded, her voice laced with psychic energy that made the air vibrate. "Kill the human." The harness on Skoros' back pulsed with electric blue energy. The creature's muscles tensed, its massive paws digging into the ground as it fought against the command. A low growl built in its throat. "Kill," the Queen shouted, rising from her throne. Skoros lunged forward, covering half the arena in a single bound. The crowd roared with bloodthirsty anticipation as the massive beast closed in on Kieran, who stood his ground despite every instinct screaming at him to run. "It's okay," Kieran whispered as Skoros skidded to a halt before him, close enough that he could feel the creature's hot breath. "I know you're in there." The Voidfang trembled, caught between the Queen's command and its own will. The harness pulsed again, more intensely, forcing a pained whine from the creature's throat. Kieran reached up slowly, placing his hand on the beast's muzzle. "Fight it," he urged. "You're more than her weapon." A stunned hush fell over the arena as Skoros pressed against Kieran's touch, then turned to face Queen Matrix. The creature's stance shifted, no longer predatory but protective, placing itself between Kieran and the Queen. "Impossible," Queen Matrix hissed, her composure fracturing. She activated a control on her throne, sending a massive surge of energy through the harness. Skoros howled in pain, but didn't move from Kieran's side. Instead, the Voidfang lowered its massive head and, with deliberate precision, began scraping the harness against the ground, attempting to dislodge it. "Stop this," the Queen commanded, her voice now trembling with rage. She turned to her guards. "Kill them both." The light Thraxian warriors poured into the arena, energy weapons drawn. Kieran reached for the base of Skoros' skull, finding the resonance point Everin had mentioned, a small depression where the harness connected to the creature's nervous system. "Hope this works," he muttered, pressing firmly. The harness emitted a high-pitched whine, then went silent. Skoros shuddered once, then stood taller, freed from the Queen's control. The Voidfang's eyes locked with Kieran's for a moment, a silent communication of trust, before it turned to face the approaching guards. In the stands, murmurs of disbelief spread like wildfire. Never had the Queen's authority been so openly challenged. Never had one of her creatures chosen another master. "Seize them," Queen Matrix shrieked, her usual poise completely abandoned. As guards closed in from all sides, Kieran spotted Everin moving swiftly through a service entrance, gesturing urgently. "An escape route." "Come on, boy," Kieran said to Skoros, placing a hand on the creature's flank. "Time to make a break for it." Together, human and Voidfang charged toward freedom, leaving behind a Queen whose fury was matched only by her fear that her reign of absolute control was beginning to crumble. The underground tunnels beneath the Thraxian capital stretched like arteries through the planet's crust, ancient passages carved by civilizations predating Queen Matrix's reign. Kieran followed Everin through the labyrinth, one hand resting on Skoros' flank for guidance in the near darkness. The Void Fang moved silently despite his massive size, ears constantly swiveling to detect pursuit. These passages were built by the Temple Guardians, Everin explained as they paused at an intersection. Her violet skin seemed to absorb what little light filtered through cracks in the ceiling. The same order that originally worked with the Void Fang, before Matrix outlawed their practices. Kieran wiped sweat from his brow, the humid air making his lungs work harder. You knew this would happen, didn't you? You were prepared. Everin's eyes, those vertical pupils widening in the darkness, met his. I hoped, she admitted. There are those of us who have waited generations for a sign that her control could be broken. A distant rumble shook dust from the tunnel ceiling. Skoros growled low, his hackles rising. They're using resonance scanners, Everin said, urgency tightening her voice. We need to reach the sanctuary before they triangulate our position. They pushed forward through increasingly narrow passages. Karen noted how Everin occasionally pressed her palm against seemingly random sections of wall, leaving behind a faint phosphorescent mark. Signal markers, she explained, catching his questioning look. For the others. Others? The resistance, small but growing. She hesitated. Matrix's cruelty extends beyond her treatment of other species. Many Thraxians suffer under her rule as well. They emerged into a vast cavern where phosphorescent fungi cast an ethereal blue glow across underground pools. The air here tasted fresher, tinged with mineral scents. Skoros padded ahead, sniffing the air with evident curiosity, his earlier tension temporarily forgotten. We'll rest here briefly, Everin decided, sinking gracefully to sit beside one of the pools. The water interferes with their scanning technology. Kieran joined her, wincing as his muscles protested the hours of flight. Without the immediate threat of pursuit, he found himself studying Everin more closely. The intricate patterns on her skin that seemed to shift subtly with her emotions, the graceful curve of her neck as she leaned down to touch the water's surface. Why help me? He asked finally. You're risking everything. Because you did what none of us could, she replied, her gaze following Skoros as the creature explored the cavern. You saw him as more than a weapon. You offered kindness when it served no purpose except compassion itself. Her fingers brushed against his hand. Such thinking is rare on Thraxis now, but it wasn't always so. The moment was interrupted by Skoros' sudden alertness, the Void Fang's head jerking toward one of the tunnel entrances. A heartbeat later, the distinctive hum of energy weapons echoed through the chamber. Move, Everin shouted, pulling Kieran to his feet as plasma blasts scorched the spot where they'd been sitting. Queen Matrix stepped into the cavern, flanked by her elite guard. Gone was her regal composure, replaced by cold fury that seemed to radiate from her like heat. Traitor, she hissed at Everin. Royal blood means nothing when tainted by treachery. Royal, Kieran whispered in shock. My sister, Everin confirmed quietly, whom I've watched descend into tyranny for too long. The Queen's eyes narrowed. The human cannot possibly mean anything to you, sister. Return to my side, and I may yet show mercy. It's not about the human, Everin replied, standing taller. It's about what he represents. Freedom from your control. Queen Matrix laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Control is protection. Without me, our species would still be scattered, vulnerable. I unified us. You enslaved us, Everin countered, just as you enslaved the Void Fang, creatures who once chose to bond with us freely. Skoros moved to stand between them and the Queen, his massive form casting a shadow over the royal entourage. Several guards shifted nervously, their weapons tracking the creature's movements. Queen Matrix's expression hardened. One beast's defiance changes nothing. I have hundreds more. But for how long? Kieran interjected, an idea forming. Skoros isn't the only one who can break your control. They're sentient beings, not tools. The Queen's attention snapped to him, her eyes burning with hatred. You understand nothing of our ways, human. A commotion at the tunnel entrance drew everyone's attention. More Thraxians appeared, not guards, but civilians, led by figures wearing robes similar to Evren's. "The Temple Guardians," Evren breathed. "They received my signal." Queen Matrix snarled orders to her guards, but hesitation had crept into their movements. The arrival of the Temple Guardians, a group many had believed extinct, created visible uncertainty. Chaos erupted as plasma fire exchanged between the guards and the newcomers. Evren grabbed Kieran's hand, pulling him toward another tunnel as Skoros bounded alongside them. "The sanctuary is just ahead," she shouted over the battle noise. "We'll be safe there long enough to implement your plan." "My plan?" Kieran asked, bewildered. Evren's expression showed surprised amusement despite their peril. "About breaking her control over the other Voidfang. You do have a plan, don't you?" Kieran thought about the neural harness, about the resonance point he'd discovered. "I might," he admitted, "but we'll need access to the Queen's control systems." The sanctuary was built around an ancient Thraxian technological hub, Evren explained as they ran. "If anyone can help you adapt your human engineering skills to our technology, it's the Temple Guardians." Behind them, Queen Matrix's enraged scream echoed through the tunnels, a promise of vengeance that chilled Kieran's blood. But as Skoros pressed reassuringly against his side, he found unexpected courage. They weren't just running anymore. They were heading toward a confrontation that could reshape the future of two species. The sanctuary of the Temple Guardians sprawled beneath a massive crystalline dome, hidden in a valley surrounded by Thraxis's jagged mountains. Ancient technology merged seamlessly with living matter, pulsing bioluminescent vines carrying data alongside crystalline conduits. For 3 days, Kieran had worked alongside the Guardians, his mechanical expertise complementing their ancestral knowledge. "It's ready," he announced, stepping back from the modified harness splayed open on the workbench. What had once been an instrument of control now housed a completely rewired central core. "If my calculations are correct, this should broadcast a disruptive frequency to all neural harnesses within a 5-mile radius." Evren placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch lingering. In the days since their escape, the space between them had gradually diminished, a connection forming that transcended their biological differences. "The scouts report the Queen's forces have found the outer perimeter," she said. "We have perhaps 2 hours before they breach our defenses." The eldest Temple Guardian, Felius, his skin bearing the most elaborate patterns Kieran had ever seen on a Thraxian, examined the modified harness. "Your species has remarkable adaptability, human. What took our ancestors generations to develop, you've recreated in days." "Not recreated," Kieran corrected. "Reversed. Your ancestors built bonds based on mutual respect. The Queen perverted that into domination." Skoros padded into the chamber, now free of any harness, his midnight fur gleaming with health. The Voidfang approached Kieran, pressing his massive head against the human's chest in a gesture that had become familiar between them. "He says the others are coming," Felius translated, his ability to understand the Voidfang's telepathic communications still astonishing to Kieran. "The Queen brings all her beasts. She means to make an example of this rebellion." A distant rumble shook dust from the sanctuary ceiling. The assault had begun sooner than expected. "We need higher ground," Kieran said, gathering the modified harness. "Somewhere the signal can reach all the Voidfang at once." Evren nodded. "The crystal spire. It amplifies energies. It's why our ancestors built the sanctuary here." They moved swiftly through the sanctuary as the sounds of battle grew closer. Temple Guardians and Resistance fighters took defensive positions, their ancient weapons powered by the same crystalline energy that illuminated the chambers. Kieran noted how they fought to incapacitate rather than kill, unlike the Queen's forces, who showed no such restraint. The crystal spire rose from the center of the sanctuary, a natural formation that reached toward the dome above. As they climbed its spiraling path, Kieran caught glimpses of the battle below. Plasma fire exchanged between defenders and attackers, the Queen's elite guard pressing forward with methodical precision. "There!" Everin pointed toward the eastern entrance, where a new contingent had arrived. Queen Matrix herself, surrounded by at least 20 Voidfang, their harnesses glowing with malevolent energy as they stalked forward, eyes vacant of the intelligence Kieran had come to recognize in Skoros. "She's using them as living shields," Kieran said, disgust rising in his throat. They reached the apex of the spire, a flat platform where the crystal's energy converged in a swirling vortex of light. Kieran knelt, connecting the modified harness to the crystal itself, while Everin and Skoros took defensive positions. Queen Matrix spotted them, her face contorting with rage. "Destroy them," she commanded, her voice carrying across the battlefield. The controlled Voidfang surged forward, clearing obstacles with terrifying efficiency. "Whatever you're doing, do it quickly," Everin warned, her weapon charged, but her reluctance to fire upon the innocent beasts evident. Kieran's fingers flew over the connections, making final adjustments. "Almost there," he muttered. "Skoros, I need you." The Voidfang padded forward, understanding in his intelligent eyes. Kieran placed his hand on the creature's head, establishing the physical connection that would serve as the template. "Your freedom," Kieran promised, "for all of them." He activated the device just as the first of the Queen's Voidfang reached the base of the spire. The modified harness emitted a pulse that rippled through the crystal, amplified 100-fold, and broadcast outward, a harmonic resonance that matched the unique frequency Kieran had discovered in Skoros' mind, the frequency of free will. Below, the attacking Voidfang froze mid-stride. Their harnesses flickered, sputtered, and went dark. For a breathless moment, nothing moved on the battlefield. Then, one by one, the creatures shook themselves as if waking from a dream. Their vacant expressions transformed, awareness returning to their eyes. They turned toward Queen Matrix not in submission, but in judgment. "No," the Queen screamed, backing away from her former weapons. "Obey me." The Voidfang made no move to attack her. They simply turned away, some padding toward the Temple Guardians, others sitting in clear rejection of further commands. Queen Matrix's elite guard, seeing their advantage evaporate, began a fighting retreat. The Queen herself stood paralyzed by disbelief, her authority crumbling before her eyes. Everin descended the spire, approaching her sister with both caution and determination. "It's over, Matrix. Your reign of fear ends today. You've doomed us all," the Queen hissed, "without absolute control." "We'll have a chance at genuine alliance," Everin interrupted. "Between ourselves, with the Voidfang, perhaps even with humans. Strength through connection, not subjugation." As Temple Guardians surrounded the Queen, Kieran joined Everin, Skoros at his side. The battle had ceased almost entirely, the Queen's forces either surrendering or retreating. "What happens now?" Kieran asked, suddenly aware that his role in this revolution had forever altered his status as a prisoner. Everin's fingers intertwined with his, her touch sending a pleasant warmth through his arm. "Now we rebuild." The old ways taught that different beings could form bonds stronger than any chain of command. Her gaze moved meaningfully between him and Skoros. "You've proven that wisdom true." Around them, Temple Guardians were already establishing connections with the freed Voidfang, ancient bonds reforming after generations of separation. Kieran watched as Skoros approached one of the smaller Voidfang, touching muzzles in what appeared to be greeting between old friends. "There will be resistance from other Thraxian strongholds," Felius warned, joining them. "And the human authorities will eventually come looking for their missing mechanic." "Let them come," Everin said confidently. "They'll find not enemies or prisoners, but allies." As twilight descended on the sanctuary, Kieran stood at the edge of the dome, watching Thraxis's 3 moons rise over the mountains. Everin joined him, her presence now familiar, comforting. "When I was captured, I thought my life was over," he admitted. "I never imagined that you would help liberate an entire species," she finished, her hand finding his again, "or that you would find a home among the stars." Skoros settled beside them, his massive form radiating contentment. Behind them, the sanctuary hummed with renewed purpose as guardians and resistance fighters worked to spread the news of the Queen's defeat. "Home," Kieran repeated, tasting the word. His gaze moved from Skoros to Evren, seeing in both the unlikely connections that had changed everything. "I think I'm starting to understand what that means." In the sky above, a shooting star traced a brilliant path across the alien heavens, not an ending, but a beginning, as boundaries between species dissolved in favor of bonds freely chosen, never again to be broken by force.